The night sky over the floating palace was darker than usual. Clouds swirled like restless waves, and the wind carried a cold bite that made the golden spires tremble. Deep in the hidden courtyard of the palace, a small cry pierced the night. It was not the usual roar of dragons or the heavy clatter of their wings. This cry was soft, trembling, almost human, but it came from a dragonling. Zephyr, the youngest of the Dragon Emperor's brood, lay curled on a silver pedestal, tears glinting in his small, scaled eyes. His tiny wings fluttered weakly and his tail twitched nervously. None of the palace attendants could calm him. They had tried warmth, soft roars, even the strongest lullabies from older dragons, but Zephyr's cries only grew louder. Zalvier, the Dragon Emperor, had been in his chambers when he heard the sound. He froze, his great wings folding around him. He was not used to his dragonlings showing fear. Zephyr had always been brave, curious, and strong even for a young dragon. Something was wrong and the Emperor's instincts told him to act. Descending from his chambers, Zalvier moved through the palace corridors, his scales brushing the walls with a faint hum. The attendant stepped aside, sensing the quiet power that accompanied him. When he reached the courtyard, he stopped, his golden eyes narrowing. There, in the shadows, he saw a human. The human was a young woman, no taller than the dragonling himself, with soft brown hair tied back and eyes that glimmered in the moonlight. She knelt beside Zephyr, holding her hands gently over him, her lips moving in a soft, steady chant. The sound was strange to Zalvier, not a roar or a hum, but a voice. Warm, soft, and strangely calming. Zephyr's cries slowed. His body relaxed and his tiny claws unclenched. The human's voice seemed to reach something deep inside him, something no dragon could reach. Zalvier blinked, a surge of curiosity rising in his chest. He had ruled for centuries and seen humans before, but none had dared enter the palace without permission, and none had shown such courage or power over a dragon. "Who are you?" Zalvier's voice thundered, echoing across the courtyard. The human did not startle. Instead, she looked up, her gaze steady and unafraid. "My name is Lyra," she said, her voice calm, "and I am here to help him." Zalvier tilted his head, studying her. "Helped him? You are a human. What could you possibly do that my attendants cannot?" Lyra smiled faintly. "I do not use strength. I use something smaller but stronger. I use care and song." She reached out, brushing Zephyr's tiny snout with her hand. "See? He listens." Zalvier frowned. Dragons were proud and strong. They valued power, fire, and speed. And yet, this human, fragile as she seemed, had calmed a dragonling that not even the strongest dragons could soothe. Zalvier felt a strange, unfamiliar feeling in his chest, a spark of respect and wonder. He stepped closer, his massive claws clicking on the marble floor. Zephyr stirred, blinking at him but did not cry. Lyra's voice continued softly, a gentle melody that seemed to wrap the courtyard in warmth. The Dragon Emperor watched in silence, feeling the bond form between the human and his child. "What is this, magic?" he asked quietly, more to himself than to anyone else. "It is not magic," Lyra said. "It is care. It is attention. It is the heart speaking." She paused and looked at Zalvier. Sometimes the smallest heart can reach where the strongest claws cannot. Zalvier considered her words. He had always believed in strength, in power, in the way dragons ruled the skies. But here was proof that something else existed, something that humans had and dragons lacked. Curiosity mixed with caution. Could he trust her? Could he let her stay with Zephyr, help him grow? Zephyr yawned and nestled closer to Lyra. His wings twitched lightly, and a soft glow began to rise from his scales. The Emperor had never seen this before. Dragons, even young ones, did not react this way. There was a spark of life, a joy he could not explain. Zalvier stepped back slightly, watching as the human continued her soft singing. The courtyard, once filled with tension and crying, was now calm. Even the wind seemed to pause, listening. Zalvier felt something shift inside him, a feeling he could not name. It was not anger, not pride. It was awe. He had ruled the skies for centuries, faced storms and enemies, seen empires rise and fall, and yet he had never seen a human do this. Never seen a dragonling respond with such trust and peace. He realized then that humans, fragile and soft as they seemed, might hold a power dragons had forgotten, the power to touch the soul, to reach the heart. For the first time, Zalvier considered the possibility that dragons were not the only rulers of the skies, not the only beings capable of changing the world. Perhaps humans could rise, not with claws and fire, but with courage, compassion, and something far stronger than he had imagined. As Lyra finished her song, Zephyr nuzzled her gently, closing his eyes. The Dragon Emperor stepped back into the shadows, silent, watching, learning. Tonight, he had seen something remarkable. A human could calm a dragonling's tears where centuries of dragon wisdom had failed. And in that quiet moment, Zalvier felt the first spark of a new understanding. One that would change his spirit and perhaps the world itself. The stars above shone brighter, reflecting in Zalvier's golden eyes. The palace was quiet, the cries gone, replaced by hope and curiosity. And in that quiet night, the Emperor knew one thing for certain. The world was about to change and humans would play a part greater than anyone had ever imagined. The morning light spilled over the floating palace, casting long shadows across the golden spires. The courtyard where Zephyr had cried the night before was quiet now, but the memory of the small dragonling's fear and the human who had calmed him lingered in Zalvier's mind. The Dragon Emperor could not stop thinking about her. Lyra was already at work. She moved with quiet purpose, carrying food and small bowls of warm water to the younger dragons. She spoke softly to each one, humming a tune that seemed to soothe them instantly. Some dragons glanced at her warily, unsure why a human dared to enter their space. Others, curious, edged closer, drawn by the warmth in her voice. Even the older attendants, proud and cautious, could not help but notice the change she brought to the courtyard. Zalvier watched from a distance, hidden among the marble columns. He had ruled for centuries and he had seen many humans. They were clever, yes, but fragile, limited by their small bodies and short lifespans. And yet, here was one who moved among dragons as if she belonged, her voice carrying calm and courage. It was something he had never seen before. Unable to resist, Zalvier approached. His wings spread wide as he descended into the courtyard, each step causing the stone beneath him to tremble. Lyra looked up but she did not step back. Instead, she smiled faintly, continuing her soft humming. Zephyr, who had been playing near a fountain, ran to her side and nuzzled her hand. "She listens to you," Zalvier said, his voice deep and rumbling like distant thunder. "Why does he trust you?" Lyra looked up at him, meeting his golden eyes without fear. "Because I care," she said simply. "I see what he feels and I show him that he is safe. I do not need fire or strength to help him. I only need patience and heart." The Dragon Emperor tilted his head, studying her carefully. He had always believed that power alone commanded respect. Dragons respected strength, skill, and dominance. Yet here was a human, fragile in appearance, commanding attention without a single roar or display of force. Zalvier felt a stirring in his chest, a new emotion he had not felt in centuries. "You are brave to stand here," he said, his voice softer now. "Dragons do not usually welcome humans so easily. You risk much by being here." "I am not afraid of dragons," Lyra replied, her voice steady. "I respect them. I do not try to fight them. I try to understand them. That is all humans need to do. We do not need to match strength with strength." She reached out again and Zephyr leaned into her hand, eyes half closed. Zalvier watched the small dragonling relax completely, something no one else had managed. His attendants murmured among themselves, unsure how to feel. Some whispered that the Emperor was being influenced by a human, that it was dangerous to trust someone so fragile. Others simply watched in awe, unable to deny the calm that had settled over the courtyard. "You speak of understanding," Zalvier said, his voice low, almost a growl. "Explain this to me. How can a human calm a dragonling when even the strongest dragons cannot?" Lyra paused, thinking carefully. "Dragons are strong, proud, and powerful. That is true. But strength can sometimes scare young ones, or make them feel alone. Humans are small, yes, but we notice details, feelings that others might miss. We listen. We wait. We show care without needing to dominate. That is why he trusts me. That is why he stops crying when I sing." Zalvier considered her words. He had never thought of trust this way. Dragons respected power because it was visible, measurable, undeniable. But humans had a quiet strength. It was invisible, subtle, and yet, as he had just seen, incredibly effective. He wondered how many times he had underestimated them, judged them by their size rather than their spirit. Lyra stood slowly, brushing her hands on her dress. "I do not seek to replace your strength," she said. "I only help where others cannot. If we work together, dragons and humans both can be stronger, not by fighting but by understanding." Zalvier felt a strange warmth in his chest. He had ruled alone for centuries, relying only on dragon skill and wisdom. Yet, watching Lyra care for Zephyr, he felt the first spark of something new. Hope. Perhaps dragons did not have to bear the world alone. Perhaps humans could be allies, guides, even teachers in ways dragons had not imagined. Zephyr chirped happily, climbing onto Lyra's shoulder as if he had chosen her as his guardian. The Dragon Emperor's attendants murmured again, their voices a mixture of awe and doubt. Zalvier ignored them. He only focused on the small human and the Dragonling she had touched so deeply. "You are unlike any human I have ever met," he said finally. "You show strength without claws, courage without fire. It is remarkable." Lyra smiled faintly. "That is all any human can do," she said. "We cannot fight like dragons, but we can reach hearts. We can show care. That is our strength." For a long moment, Zalvier simply watched, feeling something shift in him. The courtyard was no longer just a place for dragons. It had become a place of learning, understanding, and connection. He realized that this human, so small and fragile, had opened a door he had never even noticed. A door to a world where dragons and humans could work together, each learning from the other. The wind stirred again, rustling Lyra's hair. Zephyr chirped happily and nestled into her arms, safe and calm. Zalvier spread his wings, hovering above them, and felt a quiet sense of pride. Not for himself, not for his strength, but for the potential he now saw in humans. They were more than he had thought. They were clever, brave, and full of heart. And in that quiet morning, with sunlight touching the golden spires, Zalvier understood something new. Humans could be strong in ways dragons had forgotten. They could reach places dragons could not. And the smallest human, if brave enough, could change the heart of even a dragon emperor. The palace stirred to life as attendants went about their duties, but in the hidden courtyard, a new bond had formed. Zephyr trusted a human. Zalvier watched silently, feeling his spirit shift. The world was wider, richer, and more full of possibility than he had ever imagined. And he knew without doubt that this small human had shown him a strength no dragon could ever teach. The morning calm over the floating palace did not last long. Rumors had spread quickly among the older dragons that the Dragon Emperor had allowed a human into his inner courtyard. Many dragons whispered that humans were weak, unpredictable, and dangerous. Some even feared that the Emperor had grown soft, influenced by a fragile creature who could not match dragon strength. Zalvier felt the tension as he paced the upper chambers. He had seen the way the older dragons looked at Lyra, suspicious and angry. They whispered in the halls, their voices like the low growl of distant thunder. Some even questioned whether he should trust her. The Dragon Emperor had ruled for centuries, and he knew that trust was not given lightly. Yet he could not deny the truth he had seen. Lyra had calmed Zephyr when no dragon could. As he thought, a loud alarm rang through the palace. The crystal towers vibrated with warning signals. A rival faction of dragons had approached, claiming the Emperor's tolerance of humans was a betrayal. They demanded that Lyra be removed and that the Emperor prove his strength against them. Their wings beat the clouds into storms as they circled above the palace, roaring in challenge. Zalvier spread his wings, feeling the familiar surge of power. He could fight them alone as he had done countless times in the past. His fire would burn the skies, and his claws could crush any rival. Yet when he looked at Zephyr, small and trembling, he hesitated. The young Dragonling had grown attached to Lyra. Her presence calmed him, gave him courage. And now the Emperor wondered if humans might have a role in this battle, a strength dragons often overlooked. Lyra approached quietly, her hands raised in a gesture of calm. "You do not need to fight alone," she said softly. "I can help, but not with fire. I can help with strategy, with thinking and observation. I can guide if you let me." Zalvier's golden eyes narrowed. Humans were fragile. Their bodies could not survive the storms, the fire, the crushing claws. How could she help in a real fight? And yet, he remembered Zephyr's trust, the way the human had calmed his child's fear. Perhaps she saw the world differently in ways dragons could not. "Very well," he said finally. "You will not fight with claws or fire. But you will guide me. If this fails, your life is forfeit." Lyra nodded, calm and steady. "I understand. I will do my best." The rival dragons descended, their wings cutting the air like knives. They circled the courtyard, their eyes full of anger. Zalvier roared, raising a shield of fire around the palace, warning them to keep distance. But the attackers were clever and fierce. They tried to break through, their claws striking the walls, their tails smashing the gates. Lyra moved to a high balcony, observing carefully. She noticed their patterns, the way they attacked in groups, the pauses between their strikes, the moments when their attention faltered. She called softly to Zalvier, giving directions. "When they strike left, wait and strike right. Use the wind to your advantage. The small one is fast, he can draw them in while you follow." Zalvier followed her guidance, his massive wings moving with precision. He had never allowed a human to direct him, yet her strategy worked. The rival dragons faltered, confused by the tactics. Zalvier realized that humans were clever in ways dragons often overlooked. They could see details, patterns, weaknesses. They did not rely on brute force alone. Zephyr, sensing the danger, chirped nervously but stayed close to Lyra. She held him firmly, whispering soothing words. The small dragonling's courage grew, and even Zalvier felt a surge of hope. He was not fighting alone. With human guidance, the impossible seemed possible. The rival dragons became frustrated. Their attacks grew reckless, their coordination broken. Lyra noticed and called to Zalvier, directing him to strike in the moments of hesitation. Zalvier obeyed, feeling a new rhythm in the battle. It was not his usual power alone, it was a combination of dragon might and human ingenuity. Finally, the rivals faltered completely. They circled once, gave a final roar, and then retreated into the clouds, defeated but unharmed. The courtyard was quiet again, the storm settling. Zalvier landed, his claws digging into the marble, breathing heavily. He looked at Lyra, standing calmly beside Zephyr, and felt something he had never felt before, awe. "You were right," he said softly, almost to himself. "Strength alone is not always enough. You see what I could not see." Lyra smiled faintly. "It is not about seeing, my lord. It is about noticing. Humans notice what others miss. We are small but careful. We use our minds and hearts where others use only force." Zalvier nodded, a slow understanding dawning in his eyes. He had always relied on power, on fear and respect. But humans, these small, fragile creatures, had strengths of their own. Courage, wisdom, patience and care. These were not visible like claws or fire, but they were no less powerful. Zephyr chirped happily and fluttered onto Lyra's shoulder. Zalvier felt his heart swell with pride, not for his own victory but for the lesson learned. Humans, he realized, could rise in ways dragons often underestimated. They could face danger with cleverness, not strength. They could calm fear with care. They could change hearts with courage. The palace attendants whispered among themselves, some in shock, others in admiration. Even the older dragons who had doubted Zalvier's decision could not deny the truth. The human had saved the day, not with claws, not with fire, but with thought, courage and understanding. Zalvier looked at Lyra, and for the first time in centuries he considered a future where dragons and humans could work together. Perhaps humans were not weak after all. Perhaps they were the spark dragons had forgotten, the invisible strength that could guide and inspire. The sun rose fully, painting the palace in gold and fire. Zalvier spread his wings, glancing at the humans below. He felt his spirit shift, a new respect rising within him. Humans could rise, he realized. And some humans, brave and clever, could even teach a dragon emperor a new way to see the world. Zephyr chirped happily again, safe and calm, while Lyra stood strong and proud beside him. And Zalvier knew that the battle had not just been a test of power, it had been a test of understanding. And in that test, humans had proven that their strength was unlike any dragons, quiet but unstoppable. The palace, once filled with tension and fear, now hummed with a new energy. Dragons and humans together could face the future. And the Dragon Emperor, watching the small human beside his child, felt a hope he had never known. A hope that the world could be bigger, wiser and brighter than even he had imagined. The palace courtyard was quiet after the battle, but the air was filled with a new kind of energy. Zalvier spread his wings across the marble floors, feeling the warmth of the morning sun on his scales. He had won, yes, but the victory felt different this time. It was not just his strength that had defeated the rival dragons, it was the combination of his power and Lyra's cleverness. And that thought made him pause. Lyra moved among the younger dragons, her soft voice humming a gentle tune. The dragonlings chirped and flapped their small wings, circling her as if drawn by an invisible thread. She smiled as Zephyr nuzzled her hand, safe and calm. Zalvier watched, hidden in the shadows, still unsure if he should fully trust this human. Yet every action she took reminded him that humans were not weak, they were something else entirely. Something dragons had long forgotten. The older attendants were restless, whispering among themselves. Some of them still doubted Lyra, questioning why the emperor allowed her into the palace. Others could not hide their awe at what they had seen. A human, small and fragile, had guided dragons through a fight that could have ended in disaster. It was a new kind of strength, subtle but undeniable. Zalvier finally stepped forward, his massive claws clicking against the marble. "Lyra," he said, his voice deep and rumbling, "you have proven yourself tonight. But I must understand more. Humans are not dragons. You cannot breathe fire, you cannot crush with claws, yet you change the outcome of battle. How? Lyra looked up at him, calm and unafraid. I did not fight like a dragon, she said. I watched, I listened, I noticed. Dragons fight with strength and speed. Humans fight with thought, planning and care. We see what others miss. We guide, we protect, we act where strength alone cannot. Xalvier considered her words. He had always believed that power ruled the skies. Fire, wings, claws, these were what commanded respect. And yet, here was a human commanding respect in a different way. He realized that he had underestimated humans for centuries. They were clever, brave, and patient. They could change minds, hearts, and even the course of events without fire or claws. Zephyr chirped and leapt onto Lyra's shoulder, curling against her neck. The Dragon Emperor felt a spark of emotion he had not recognized in a long time. Pride, perhaps. But also something deeper, a sense of hope. This tiny human, standing beside his child, had opened a door that dragons had forgotten existed. The palace has been quiet too long, Xalvier said finally. Perhaps it is time for a new beginning. Humans and dragons, maybe we can work together. Lyra's eyes widened slightly. Work together? She asked softly. Yes, Xalvier replied. You have shown me something I had forgotten. Strength alone is not everything. Care, wisdom, and courage are also forms of strength. I believe humans can teach dragons as much as dragons teach humans. The attendants whispered among themselves. Some were skeptical, some amazed, but none could deny what they had witnessed. Xalvier had allowed a human to guide a battle. He had seen the difference it made. And now he was speaking of partnership. Lyra nodded slowly, understanding the gravity of his words. I would be honored, my lord, she said. I will help wherever I can. Not to replace dragons but to work with them to build something stronger together. Xalvier stepped closer to the human, his massive form casting a shadow over the courtyard. He had ruled for centuries and he had faced countless enemies. Yet never had he felt a bond like this, not with dragons, not with humans. He realized that this was the start of something new, a harmony of two worlds. Zephyr chirped happily, sensing the change in the air. The other young dragons began to approach Lyra, curiosity shining in their eyes. Even the older dragons, proud and wary, began to watch quietly. They could see that this human brought calm, guidance, and understanding. They could see that her presence made the dragonlings braver, calmer, and happier. Xalvier spread his wings and let out a long, low roar that echoed across the palace. It was not a roar of warning or anger, it was a roar of change. He called the older dragons to attention, showing them that humans were not enemies. Humans could rise, and some humans could even guide dragons without fear, without fire, without claws. The sun climbed higher, painting the courtyard in gold. Lyra hummed softly, and the dragonlings chirped along, their small voices blending with hers. Xalvier watched, feeling his spirit lift. Perhaps this was what he had been missing all along. Dragons were strong, yes, but humans brought a different kind of strength, one that could calm, guide, and inspire. The palace attendants began to relax, seeing the emperor's approval. Some dragons even stepped closer to Lyra, their heads tilting as they listened to her soft voice. The courtyard, once tense with doubt and fear, was now alive with quiet energy. It was a new kind of harmony, one built not on fear or strength alone, but on trust, care, and understanding. Xalvier looked at Lyra and Zephyr together, a feeling of awe rising within him. Humans could rise in ways dragons could not. They could teach, guide, and inspire without fighting. And dragons, if willing to see, could learn from them. This was the start of a new era, one where two worlds so different could find balance and strength together. The wind stirred, carrying the soft hum of Lyra's voice across the palace. Zephyr chirped and flapped his tiny wings, safe and happy. The Dragon Emperor felt a new sense of pride, not in his power, not in his claws, but in what humans and dragons could accomplish together. In that quiet courtyard, Xalvier understood something he had never known. Strength was not only measured in fire or claws. It was measured in courage, wisdom, and heart. And humans, small and fragile as they seemed, could rise in ways dragons had long forgotten. The palace shimmered in the morning light, full of promise. Lyra smiled at Zephyr, and Xalvier watched silently, his heart lighter than it had been in centuries. Harmony had come to the skies, not through power alone but through understanding. And the Dragon Emperor knew that the bond between humans and dragons was only just beginning. The sun was high over the floating palace, painting the golden spires with light that shimmered like fire. The courtyard, once filled with fear and tension, was alive with calm and laughter. Dragonlings flapped their small wings as Lyra moved among them, humming softly. Zephyr chirped happily, hopping from one shoulder to another, safe and playful. Zalvier watched from above, perched on a high balcony. His golden eyes traced the human and dragonlings below, a sense of pride rising in his chest. For centuries he had ruled alone, relying on strength and fear to maintain order. But now he realized that true strength could come from unity, trust, and understanding. A single human had shown him what dragons often overlooked, that courage and heart could change everything. The older dragons, who had been skeptical at first, were slowly gathering in the courtyard. They watched the human with curiosity, noting how the dragonlings responded to her gentle voice. Zalvier had allowed Lyra into the palace, and now they could see the results. The younger dragons were calmer, happier, and more confident. The Emperor's decision had sparked a shift, and even the proudest dragons could not deny it. "This is remarkable," Zalvier said softly, spreading his wings. His voice echoed across the courtyard, not as a warning but as a declaration. "Humans have strength that is different from ours. It is quiet but it is powerful. They teach patience, courage, and understanding. And they inspire even the strongest dragon to see the world in a new way." Lyra looked up at him, eyes shining. "I only want to help," she said gently. "I do not seek power. I only want to care for those who need it, to guide where I can. That is all humans ask." Zalvier nodded. He understood now that humans were not weak. They were clever, brave, and compassionate. They could rise in ways dragons could not with claws or fire, but with heart and mind. And when humans and dragons worked together, the possibilities were endless. Zephyr chirped and flapped his small wings, bouncing toward Lyra. She caught him easily, holding him close as she hummed a melody. The sound carried across the palace, reaching even the highest towers. The dragonlings followed, drawn to the song, their small voices blending with hers in a chorus of joy. Zalvier felt a warmth in his chest, a new kind of pride that had nothing to do with power. The palace attendants moved quietly, giving space to the Emperor and the human. Some whispered, impressed by what they saw. Others were still skeptical, but even they could not ignore the calm and harmony that had settled over the courtyard. The power of unity was visible and it was undeniable. Zalvier descended to the courtyard, his massive form casting a shadow over the dragonlings. He landed carefully, his claws making soft indentations in the marble. The dragonlings chirped in excitement, but none were afraid. Zephyr climbed onto Lyra's shoulder again, chirping happily, while the other dragonlings circled around them. "You have changed something in the palace," Zalvier said, his deep voice rumbling with meaning. "Not just the young dragons but the spirit of all who live here. You have shown that humans can rise, not by strength alone but by heart. You have shown me something I had forgotten." Lyra smiled softly. "We all have something to give," she said. "Strength is not only in fire or claws. Sometimes it is in courage, in care, in understanding. That is what humans can offer." The Dragon Emperor looked around the courtyard, seeing dragons and humans together in a way that had never happened before. The air was filled with calm energy, laughter, and song. The rival dragons who had attacked before were long gone, and no one spoke of fear anymore. The palace was alive with possibility. "This is only the beginning," Zalvier said finally. "Humans and dragons can work together. We can face challenges side by side. The world is bigger than we imagined, and together we can rise higher than ever." Lyra nodded, holding Zephyr gently. "Then let us rise together," she said. "Not as enemies, not as strangers, but as allies, as friends, as something stronger than either of us alone." Zalvier felt a surge of hope. For centuries he had believed that dragons ruled the skies alone. Now he saw that humans had a role to play, one that was just as important as wings or fire. Together, dragons and humans could face anything. Together they could create a world where courage, care, and understanding mattered as much as strength. The dragonlings chirped and flapped their wings, spinning in the air as Lyra's song lifted them higher. The attendants watched quietly, amazed at the bond that had formed. Even the older dragons, proud and wary, began to step closer, observing the human with new respect. Zephyr chirped happily, nudging Lyra's face with his small snout. She laughed softly, a clear, gentle sound that carried across the courtyard. Zalvier felt a warmth he had not known in centuries. This was not just a bond between a human and a dragonling, it was the start of a legend. The story would spread across the floating realms, whispered by dragons and humans alike. The tale of the human waitress who had calmed a dragon emperor's child, guided a battle with wisdom, and taught dragons a new kind of strength. It would inspire humans to rise, to believe in their courage, and to know that even the smallest heart could change the world. Xalvier looked at Lyra and Zephyr, then at the courtyard full of dragons and humans together, and felt his spirit lift. He had seen something extraordinary. A new era was beginning, one where two very different worlds could meet, learn, and grow together. The wind stirred gently, carrying Lyra's soft song across the palace. Zephyr chirped along and the dragonlings followed. The golden spires shone in the sun, reflecting a world full of promise. And in that quiet, shining moment, the Dragon Emperor knew one thing for certain. The story of humans and dragons working together would be remembered for generations. A new legend had begun, not of fire and claws but of heart, courage, and the quiet strength of humans. And the Dragon Emperor, watching the scene unfold, felt a hope he had never known. The skies were no longer ruled by dragons alone. They belonged to both dragons and humans, rising together toward a future filled with possibility, trust, and harmony.